Oh, great. Okay, well, I might get started here, just looking at the time and knowing I've got lots of fun information to share with you, and wanting to have some time for breakout rooms and questions at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
I'm going to turn off the little ding.
Yeah, that's great. I know, that's new, I think.
It's not new.
I haven't done tons of...
That looks good, Brenna.
That looks good. Okay, thank you. Okay, so welcome. Thank you so much for being here. This workshop is called Good News, How to Share the Impact of Your Ministry. My name is Brenna Baker. I am the Community of Faith Stewardship Support staff for our 3 Southwest Ontario regions. So that's Western Ontario Waterways, Horseshoe Falls, and Antler River Watershed. I am geographically located on Treaty 18A land, or the town of Milton, and I am very grateful for all the people who have cared for this land throughout its history, and remain committed myself to reconciliation and acts of reconciliation. So you might share in the chat where you are tonight, and give a word of thanks silently for those who have cared for that land and continue to care for it. So the purpose of this workshop is to think about how we tell the good news, the story, the impact of a particular ministry or project, maybe within our community of faith or our organization. I know there's some outreach ministries here and camps and things represented as well. And so we're not looking, I guess, sometimes those of you who have been in our stewardship courses, we talk about kind of inspiring as a whole, like how do we talk about our whole life together? This is about thinking about something specific. So you have an initiative, a ministry, a project that you want to share the impact of. And that could be just with your community internally. It could be to your wider community, the people in your neighborhood who you want to share this information with. It could be because you're applying for a grant, or maybe you've received a grant and you are looking to report back. So I'm going to give you lots of information about kind of how you do all those things. But in general, we start with telling the story and the impact, and then those things can be translated into grant application and reporting back. So I'm just going to take a minute now. Maybe I wonder if the other staff who are here, the other region staff, if you would want to introduce yourselves, and then I'm going to introduce a guest we have with us, Lindsay Vautor. So, but maybe we'll start with other staff first. Therese, just in case if people don't know you all. Oh, and you're muted. I know.
It's not a meeting if you don't hear that at least once.
Yeah.
Not a Zoom meeting anyways. Yeah, hello. My name is Therese Samuel. I use the pronouns she and her, and I serve as Minister for Right Relations and Social Justice in the 3 regional councils of Southwestern Ontario.
Thanks. Kathy?
Hi, I'm Kathy Douglas, and I live in Kitchener, Ontario on Haldeman Treaty Tract lands. And I use pronouns she and her, and I'm called the Faith Formation Minister in the 3 regions of Southwestern Ontario.
Thanks. And Michelle?
I'm Michelle Pettick. I go by she, her pronouns. I live in Toronto under Treaty 13, and I am Administrative Assistant, Website and Social Media Management.
Great, thank you. And thanks to these 3 folks for helping me to get this all set up tonight and get everything organized. So that brings us to our special guest, which is Lindsay Vautour. Am I saying your last name right? Vautour?
Vautour, but I still have
Vautour.
my husband, so we're not even 100% sure.
Okay. Well, I invited Lindsay tonight for a number of reasons. One, Lindsay is a great storyteller. So Lindsay writes all of the mission and service stories that you would see on the mission and service website, or you get the booklet in the mail with the stories. She works on the videos that are produced that are on YouTube that many of our communities of faith share. And in addition to just being a great storyteller and somebody who we can get a lot of knowledge from, some of you who are here tonight received mission support grants from your discipleship and justice commissions, which is great news, and we're so excited for you. But you are asked to report back after you have your project and you receive your funds and you do your project. We want to know how it went. We want to know that good news. And also, because those funds come from mission and service, Lindsay can be another person who you report to, who you give your good news to. So I'm going to let Lindsay talk for just a few minutes about her process and how she collects stories and what she chooses to highlight. I'm just going to stop sharing so that we can focus on her and listen to her. Over to you, Lindsay.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate all of you being interested in what I have to say, and I hope I don't disappoint with that. So storytelling is something I'm deeply very passionate about because I love hearing things from people. It's so much nicer than just listening to something or reading something where you can tell someone has no passion. So I share the stories, but they're not my stories. And that's kind of the root of how I like to share them. Is letting the person who's actually involved with that have their voice. So kind of embracing their passion and trying to capture their feeling as I'm sharing the story. So if something has more of a serious tone, trying to understand how they got involved with that. One of the questions I really like to focus on is how people keep hope and keep inspired, because there's so many things that are against a lot of the grants and a lot of the pieces and the work that people do. So I try to encourage people to listen to how people stay hopeful, because I think that encourages all of us to stay hopeful. So when I write a story, I kind of start by looking at who I'm talking to and the organization or the grant that they're with, and how easy it is to find information on that if I had no idea and I had just kind of heard this in passing. And I start my storytelling from there. So I think, well, if it's very, very easy to find information, we're not going to sit and focus on sending the same message over and over again in our mission and service stories. So what I like to do is see where we're at in the first place, and then go expand on that easy to find information. When I'm actually able to visit partners, that is my absolute favorite, because people are so passionate, and I love hearing why people got involved, what makes them tick, and all the kind of impact that's been on them. I was fortunate enough to visit the London Community Chaplaincy at one point, and I was able to speak with the lady who runs that, a volunteer, and a couple of people who have been benefiting from the program in their community. And the tone is all the same in there of gratitude, but the stories are so varied and the impact is so interesting. And at the root, we're all people who want to engage with other people. So when I'm writing stories, that's what I'm trying to find is that commonality and that connection. And also what we learn at the United Church of Canada, because in a true partnership, we're both giving and receiving. So we're not just giving money, but what are we receiving too? And trying to stay engaged in that partnership and trying to learn from people, because every story should have more or less of a purpose that can inspire people to continue on their journey and learn what the impact of their support is doing. So that's basically, in one breath, because I could keep talking forever, is kind of how I try to orient my stories. Again, just recapping, I find the basic information, and if I can't find it, then that's what we talk about. And if I can find it, we expand off of that. So if anyone has any more specific questions, or in the future, if you have stories about mission and service grants, please talk to me, because I am genuinely interested and I really do want to share more stories.
Thanks so much, Lindsay. Yeah, so we're gonna have a time for questions at the end. And Lindsay may not be here for that. I can do my best, or I will pass them on and get them back to everybody when I send out materials after the workshop. I think one quick question I might ask you is how you decide um, which particular thing to highlight. So I know you said, I understand what you mean. Like sometimes the information is easy to find, it's just on a website or something. But with a group like London Community Chaplaincy, they have a whole bunch of programs. How do you decide, okay, I'm going to kind of dial in on one certain thing or one certain story?
Absolutely. That's probably one of the hardest things for me to figure out, honestly, because there's so many angles that I can look at. The first one that we've shared is kind of in our Easter theme is education. So we looked at a network of support, somewhat of a parenting class. We could have taken a lens on a lot of different things. And I am writing more stories about London Community Chaplaincy that are going to be distributed more evenly throughout the year. So it's not just 1 month of one partner. So there is more. It just kind of happened to fit nicely in the theme, and it's pretty well about the balance that we can offer through global and Canadian stories, a good balance of, Indigenous and justice, anti-racism. So it's not all just a bulk of one thing in one go. So it kind of balances out there.
Yeah, that's great. That's interesting to think about. So that's a good thing to hold on to if there's themes throughout the year, other things that a community or organization might be working on where they want to tell a story to highlight. Yeah, that theme.
Brenna and Lindsay, it's Michelle Pettick here.
Okay.
There's one question. The asker, Allison, wants to know if there's a hard copy of these stories.
So at this point, we don't have a hard copy of the stories right now. We are going to be releasing quarterly a document that can be printed off, but we've been going through a few changes with the mission and service stories, and we're going to be going through a few more. We're working back towards that sort of aspect. I've been working on this for just over a year now. So we're really trying to figure out what's going on. And it's also worth noting, we do get a lot of questions about videos, and those are coming. It's been a really interesting process being able to visit people and get stories, even with pandemic regulations being lifted. It's been quite the process being able to get places. So I'm really looking forward to actually the next few months. I'll be doing a little bit more one-on-one interviewing with my camera and with a phone, tripods everywhere. It's going to be phenomenal. I'm very excited for that. So that's something as well. When I'm talking about collecting stories, I really would like, as much as possible, to be able to actually speak face to face. So either on a Zoom meeting or if I'm in the area, great too.
And Lindsay, I wonder if you can just tell people a little bit more about the stories. And I know what they are, and I know some congregations use them, but I imagine that some don't, and some people might not know exactly what you're talking about. So if you can just clarify that for those folks.
That's a great place to start. So if we roll back to the beginning of what I'm talking about, let's pretend I started with this. So the mission and service stories kind of serve a ton of different purposes. We distribute them in newsletters. We put them on our website. We encourage communities of faith to share them. And essentially, it's a bite-sized impact report. So these are stories of people who have received mission and service grants and where that funding is going and the good work that's being done in the communities. So something like London Community Chaplaincy, with their grant, they're running networks of support, they're running food programming, they're running all those sort of things. And one wonderful thing about our church folk is that we're all very humble. But one very troublesome part is that we are all very humble. So realistically, unless we're actually sharing the good news and the good work that people are doing, we don't brag about it. We don't talk about it. It stays within the community. So it also serves as inspiration. I've found in my own community of faith, we've become a bit more open with using ideas that other communities of faith have been using. So if we're talking about, London Community Chaplaincy, which is just the example we're going to stay with, if someone else in another region is inspired by that, go ahead and try and get that started. It's not copying or stealing ideas. It's all wonderful work that's being done. So it serves as impact reporting and hopefully inspiration too.
Great. Thanks so much, Lindsay. I'm going to build on what you've said and keep us moving here. And so folks know, I will send out links in the materials that come out after, so you can read the stories, and you can show, I mean, I think the videos are from previous years now, but that it would still be good to show those things and look forward to new ones coming. So lots of links are on their way. Too
Yes,
many
I
probably.
also do want to share that we're always looking for feedback and ways to improve and ways to evolve. So if you have read the stories and you're thinking it's lacking something, or you're thinking that there's more that we can be doing, please feel free to reach out. I think, Brenna, you have the MS at unitedchurch.ca. So we have an inbox that goes right to mission and service, and we can kind of address it from there. Because if you think it to yourself, but you don't tell us, we don't know that you're sharing that feedback. So we'd love to hear it.
That's right. Yeah. We want to get all of our grant recipients into a story. That'll be a goal.
I genuinely want to hear about it. I really do, personally, because I love hearing stories, also on a professional level, but genuinely on a personal level, I love hearing what people are doing and what inspired it and what inspires you. So
awesome. Thanks so much, Lindsay. Thanks for popping in tonight. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Okay, well, I'm going to keep moving here. And we talk about, Lindsay did such a good job talking about good news and that idea of not telling good news where you try to be humble. I wanted to start tonight by reminding us why we tell our good news stories, and I'm going to jump ahead to Easter, which is coming. But to remind us that this is not just, I guess, sort of a marketing thing, right? This is actually deeply embedded in who we are. So this is the end of Matthew's gospel. But the angel said to the women, "Don't be afraid. I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He isn't here because he's been raised from the dead, just as he said. Come, see the place where they laid him. Now hurry, go and tell his disciples he's been raised from the dead. He is going on ahead of you to Galilee. You will see him there. I've given the message to you." With great fear and excitement, they hurried away from the tomb and ran to tell his disciples. But Jesus met them and greeted them. They came and grabbed his feet and worshiped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Don't be afraid. Go and tell my brothers that I am going into Galilee. They will see me there." So why tell our stories in the first place? It isn't about bragging, but it's because we are people of good news. We are called to go and tell, to point to where God is alive in our midst. And we do that by telling the stories of our ministries and our projects. Beyond that, from a much more nonprofit kind of organizational standpoint, we have to tell our stories in order to inspire our donors, the people who are already supporting our ministry, as well as potential donors. There's also an aspect of transparency. So we know that people are going to be more generous when they feel like we're handling our resources well and doing something meaningful with it. Increasingly, all nonprofits, but maybe especially, I guess, religious-based nonprofits are actually on the decline in terms of public trust. So people don't trust churches as much as they used to. So part of telling our stories is to gain that trust, to say we're doing something meaningful in our community with the resources that we have. Beyond that, we want to inspire one another. I really liked what Lindsay said about, like, we don't need to keep a good idea to ourselves. If we hear something, it might trigger something someplace else. Maybe not the same exact thing, but one community of faith might hear something, another church says, okay, great, we could try that as well. And then, of course, when we apply for grants, we have to tell a compelling vision of our ministry, what we're doing, the impact that we imagine it could have. Sometimes when we apply for a grant, it's for something brand new. Sometimes it's something existing and we want to build on it, do something new with it. But either way, we have to do that vision casting, telling the story of impact. And on the end of things, right, for those of you who have received grants, there's really sort of an obligation to report on the grant and how we've used it. And so there's another way to tell the story using all different means. Okay, so we're going to look into how do we tell our story? What are the things we might want to address? And when I'm saying story, I'm thinking of the examples Lindsay gave. So you might, if you have lots of technology in your church, you might be making a video, right? That goes on social media, but maybe it's just a blog post. Maybe you're writing a letter at the end of the year to invite people to donate, and you want to tell a story of a particular project or initiative. Maybe just on Sunday morning, I remember when I was in a ministry setting in a congregation, Sunday, if there had been an event over the weekend, we often acknowledged it, right? Oh, thanks to everybody who helped with the potluck yesterday. It was great. But we don't really tell the story of what happened there, right? People found community and all of that. So there's all kinds of ways to tell the story. And one thing as you're thinking about the story is naming a problem. So if you start to pay attention to the letters and the material that you get from other nonprofits, we've kind of just passed the big season for that with the holiday and things, but they often talk about a very particular problem. So what is the problem that you're trying to solve with your ministry or your project? And you want to be as specific as possible. So maybe you've noticed in your community there's a problem of food insecurity. Lots of communities are facing that right now. Can you be even more specific though? When you're talking to your donors, can you say, we notice that children especially were going to school without breakfast. So we started this breakfast program, right? Like, what is the problem that is being addressed? Maybe it's loneliness for seniors. Maybe there's no safe space in your community for 2S LGBTQIA plus youth. Whatever the problem is, think about how you're addressing it. Because otherwise there's that sense of like, well, why are you doing this, right? So you want to know the problem that you're addressing. And then describe the impact. And we'll talk about some different ways that you can measure the impact and talk about it. But what do you think if you're applying for a grant or you're in the planning stages of something, maybe you're trying to get initial funding, whether that's through a grant or just through donors and offerings. But what do you think will be different, right? In a year from now, what will be different because of this project that you're taking on? Or what is different already if you're reporting back or if you're looking for more funding for something that's been going on. Another way to think about it is if this ministry didn't exist, what would be lost? So if this didn't exist, what would we be missing out on? So you can weave that into a story as well. Sometimes it's important when we're sharing these stories to connect to a certain time of year. Christmas is obviously an easy one. A lot of our churches do some kind of Christmas focused initiative, right? Maybe food hampers, gathering coats or things like that, or gifts for local folks in the community. But maybe something like there was a disaster in your town or a local kind of crisis, and because of that, your thing emerged, right? So is there a reason, this is sort of the why now question, right? Is there a reason that this is coming up at this particular time, or is it tied to something in our life of faith, Easter, for instance? That would all be good to include in your communications as you're telling your story. And when you're talking to when you're putting your story together, whether you're writing it, so maybe you're making something like a mission and service story, what used to be called the minutes for mission, right? Maybe you're making a very brief little handout. Maybe somebody's going to tell the story. Maybe it's a video online, right? But think about your audience. Who are you trying to reach through this story? And know that the emphasis might be different depending on who you're talking to, because you don't always have tons of space. You can't say everything about it, right? That's why I asked Lindsay, how do you make a decision? Because you can't tell the whole story of something. You kind of have to pick one aspect of it. So you think about your audience. And as an example, I was trying to think of examples for this workshop. So this may or may not work, but let's say your congregation renovated its hall. The previous church I was in did that while I was there, and it was a really great project and led to lots of new initiatives in the hall. So that's what came to my mind. But they raised some money, they renovated the hall, right? And let's say now on Friday evenings, a youth group is meeting in there. Well, if you're talking to the people inside your church, you might really focus on the actual physical renovations, right? So you might talk about how the new AV system allows the youth to watch movies and have a movie night, how the renovated kitchen allows them to serve food in a better way. Maybe they put in some elements that made the space a lot warmer. And you could include a quote from one of the youth. So, Mary says, well, this place is like a second home to me, something like that, right? So that the people who have invested in this, the physical aspect of things, feel like, okay, it's making a difference. That was a good investment. Externally, though, if you're looking outside of your community of faith, when you're telling this story, you might focus more on the youth, right? Because maybe people from the community are thinking about sending their youth there. So then you're telling the story about how Mary was really shy, but then she started coming to our youth group, and because of the great leaders and the safe space that they have created there, Mary feels a lot more confident even when she's at school. She loves talking, not, whatever it is, the story, but you're looking at things in a slightly different angle based on who you're telling the story to. It's all still true. It's all still a part of it. You're just choosing kind of which elements to highlight. Probably the thing that I find many of our communities of faith don't think about, and I think maybe some wider organizations are, I guess, outside of church organizations think about more because they have to, is collecting data. So you want to think about this ahead of time, because it's really hard to go backwards and try to find this after the fact. But you want to collect data as you're going along. And it kind of depends on what story do you want to tell, what the grant givers are asking for in terms of what you want to collect. But these are some things you might want to think about ahead of time. The number of participants, obviously, like who come to your whatever thing you're doing, a meal or a children's program or whatever you're doing, the number of people who come, or maybe it's something online. I thought about that today, like as I was asking how many people are coming, right? The number of online viewers. Sometimes it's important to look at how many people have gone to your website, because maybe you created something online. So that kind of data, as well as at times the demographics of participants, especially if there's a target group you're trying to reach. So maybe it is seniors. Maybe you felt like, again, there was a need for maybe like racialized or marginalized youth to do something. And so you want to make sure that they're coming, right? So there could be other demographics that you'd like to include. Volunteer hours is not one that people think of, but that can be really important when you look at the value of something. How much volunteer time is it taking? Because that's money that you're saving potentially on another side of things, right? And sometimes the cost and value of services. So if maybe you're running kind of like a food bank or something, what would the value be of the food that you're giving out if it was at grocery store prices? That could be something to track. And all of those things are just guesses. Usually it doesn't matter if it's, exact. Nobody can really know, but you can do your best guess. And the same is if you're offering space to a community group, maybe you have a partnership with a group that doesn't pay any rent in your building, but could you guess what that would be worth if it was at market rate? Those are things to keep track of. Feedback from participants is really great to have. A lot of people don't mind doing this and don't feel like you're prying if you ask people to fill out just a survey or answer like one question or something. Maybe you're starting a lunch for seniors because you notice that isolation is a problem in your community. And so you could just ask them, does this help with your loneliness? Do you feel less lonely when you attend the monthly lunch? Okay, 5 said yes and 2 said no. Well, then you have it, right? Like it's serving its purpose. The program that I work with, called to be the church, the journey. Some of you have done our stewardship classes. We have a question on our evaluation. Do you feel more hopeful as a result of this class? And we're asking because one of our goals is to create hope in our communities of faith. And that's a really hard thing to measure unless you ask. So this is a really good one, way to get that sort of soft, squishy data that you can't like count and measure. And as you're going along, make sure that you get quotes and photos. Photos should be active. So actually the little picture I have up here is not a great one, but I couldn't find maybe something better. But you want to show pictures like closer to the first slide I had that had a picture of food being served. I had a picture of children like being active and engaged with something. So not just like kind of a lineup of people, but something active where like you can see the thing that you're doing, and always use real people. Don't use stock imagery. That's really obvious for people to find. And use quotes from participants. This is a great way for them to show support for the program and show their gratitude. Now, of course, for either of these things, you need consent and permission. Lots of people are a little bit concerned about photos. I know, like, I'm a person who doesn't give permission for my child to be on anything. But there's creative ways around that as well. You can always see if people would be comfortable with the back of a head or just showing hands, or some way that you can still get people in the shot and show what's going on. And then quotes, sometimes people may not want their name, or they don't want to, I guess, be the speaker or something, or they wouldn't want to be on a camera, but they could give a quote about the way that this program has impacted them. And you might just use their first name. You might change their name altogether. You could say just a parent of one of our youth, or a participant, a guest, right? Just use something general, says da 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 about this, right? I know sometimes there's some concern here about, oh, we don't want to be too invasive, or people want to be kind of anonymous. But I have found in a lot of the outreach work that I've done, Many people are looking for a way to support a thing that they love. And if you tell them like, hey, this helps get the word out and might help other people, I think like 90% of the time people love to do that, right? Because that might be the way that they can give back, is to give their support through a photo or a quote or telling their story. It's actually quite empowering for people to do that. So you might think through that as you're putting your program in place and then carrying it out. One thing that was a good learning for me as I started in this work is that the individual story is more meaningful than the whole. So what do I mean by that? This is another example where I would say, look to the mail that you get from charities that you support, including mission and service and church related things, but especially beyond that. Often they talk about one person's story. So we connect emotionally to things. We're more apt to be generous when we can connect emotionally to something. So giving just facts and figures, 50 people came this month, 45 of them were seniors, we ran the program 3 times, it was great. That's not as meaningful as a specific story. So again, I'm just trying to come up with examples here, but you might, a generality would be something like, a group of seniors comes once a month to our program to play games and enjoy a meal. Okay, well, that sounds nice, right? But that's actually less meaningful and less kind of emotionally connective than, let me tell you about John. John started coming last year after his spouse died, and he felt he needed to make some new friends and get out a little bit. John cannot be beat at cards. He's the best at cards. And he says that our cookies are almost as good as his spouse's. Okay, now you have a picture of John, who is not a real person, but you get the idea and you're thinking about him and you're like, oh my gosh, how transformative is that for him, right? So find a specific when you're telling your stories that's often more meaningful, actually. And I know it feels like, well, we're leaving out all the other stories. You can come back to them another time, but it feels it's more meaningful to donors and things when you have that really specific story. And I kind of already went over this, but tell your good news like everywhere. In worship, you can put it in, you can have speakers talk about it in slides, in the bulletin, social media, of course, newsletters, anything you have communication wise. And then also one thing I think we don't think about a lot, consider inviting local media to some events. So if you have something that's more community oriented, have some local media come. I know a lot of towns there, if there is like a local paper or something, they're often looking for this kind of thing and they are desperate for great photos. So feel free to invite them, and the worst case scenarios, they say no, and that's fine, but it gets the word out that you're active and engaged. Newspapers are still a great thing, and they often have an online platform as well. So then they're like, post the photo there as well. And I want to reiterate too that even the most basic ministries deserve stories. So I don't know, kind of what moved each one of you to come here tonight, if you have something in mind or if you're just kind of curious. Even if you think, oh, we're not doing anything new right now, or like we don't feel like we're, having some big project. Even these basic things that we do as the church day in, day out can have really meaningful stories. So worship, pastoral care, choir, right? Talk about who's been in your choir the longest, right? Tell a story about them, about what it means to them, why they're there, how it's changed their life. Highlight them, take a great photo of them, see if they'll share that story. Sunday school, even, and maybe especially if there's only 2 kids, right? Like, tell the story about that. Pastoral care, like a story, the need there, right? You can really name a problem that people need to feel closer to God in times of grief, fear, medical uncertainty. You could say our pastoral care team, including our minister, visit an average of 5 people every month, offering love and prayers of peace. One member who recently had a major surgery said this connection helped her feel calmer and supported during a difficult time, right? And it's like, oh my gosh, we do that all the time. Yeah, you do that all the time, to find a story and share it. Because many people don't know that we're doing this in our United Churches. And it's really great to share that with people. And you might get people inspired to participate. In our stewardship work, we get a lot of questions about how to kind of translate the big costs of our budgets, which are building costs and salaries. And so you could tell the story of your building, right? And what does the building do? So you're not just paying your hydro bills and paying for upkeep just for the sake of doing that, right? What it translate it into, what does the money go towards? So it goes towards hospitality, right? Or maybe towards community. Again, you could name the problem as our communities are fractured more and more. People don't talk to their neighbors. We don't know where to go for support. The church, the building, answers that problem by providing space for our community, welcoming our neighbors, sharing God's love. So translate the costs into what actually is happening. And salaries the same way. So, your minister, I can say this because I used to be in a parish, right? We actually work more than 1 hour a week. So you want to talk about all that your minister does, right? Or your staff, actually, I should say too, right? Even the office administrator, that'd be a great story to tell. What does the office administrator do? Again, hospitality, but also information, support, keeps things going. So salaries go towards leadership, education, support, care, all those things. That's a great story to tell, to talk about the impact that the funds are having. So we're going to show some examples. I'm going to give you a heads up because in a few minutes, I'm going to put you into breakout rooms, and you have to tell the people in your breakout room a story from your community of faith. Excuse me, where God is alive and active in your community of faith. So you can start thinking now, but I'm going to show some examples, one mission and service video, and then one, the London Community Chaplaincy one that's in writing. And we'll just talk about, like, what is the problem being addressed? What is the takeaway that they're going for? Let's see, hopefully this works. Oh, nope, go back. Here we go. Just, Michelle, maybe just shout if you can't hear once I get going.
It's good. Thank you.
Right now, the world is seeing more displaced people than ever before. Refugees flee their homes when it's too dangerous to remain in their country. The uprooting and uncertainty can take a toll on physical and mental well-being. Today, I'm chatting with Chris-Ann Alvarez, a refugee support staff member, about how your mission and service gifts care for refugees.
Hello, Chris-Ann. It's really good to be with you today. What are some of the key refugee work that we're doing with mission and service?
All of the staff, the funding comes directly from MNS, and our membership into the Canadian Council for Refugees, that's directly funded by MNS, and also our SAW fee. So sponsorship agreement holder is what we are officially called, and basically what that is our agreement with Immigration Canada to be able to bring them here instead of going to another organization and knocking on doors. That's very unique, and it's a huge responsibility. Mission and services prioritizing refugees and allowing for a refugee program to exist. These are huge. This means more lives being changed, more people being welcomed.
Tell me, Chrisanne, about the ways that refugees contribute and enrich our communities.
In so many ways, they start businesses, they fill job gaps, but they also take on jobs where they're able to contribute in meaningful ways through their culture as well, that they're so generous in sharing with us. In the ways that they break bread with us, they welcome us into their homes. I think what people really need to know is that refugees do not choose to be refugees. There's this huge misconception that they're choosing to come here, and that's something I really want to emphasize. It's not a choice. It's something they're forced into. I remember when I first started working in this field, I was cautioned to not look in the comment section of news articles that are posted online because you see so much prejudice, so much racism.
What is the world you most want to see?
I most want to see a world where everyone has a place they can call home. And I think we take that very much for granted here.
Your gift for mission and service will help to continue refugee program staffing.
Okay, so when I watched this, first to point out this format, which is a bit different, but I think really interesting, this interview format that they employ here, which might be a way for your annual meeting or something. We've got those coming up, or maybe are already underway. But you know, you could interview somebody who's has a particular role about what they do and what they're seeing. That would be really interesting. But I think to me, there's a couple things that stand out, right? So first, the person being interviewed said if we take nothing else away, right, she wants us to know that being a refugee is not a choice. So that stands out to me. And then right at the end, Alexa Gilmore says, your mission and service donations support the staffing, right, and keep the staffing going in the refugee programming. So it's very clear, right? What's the need? We need staffing. Why? Because we want to support all these people, and this is a growing problem. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing this and just jump on quickly to. Oh, I have to change one thing to show you this London Community Chaplaincy. There we go. Okay, so this one is, Lindsay referenced this, the London Community Chaplaincy. I wanted to highlight this one because they get mission support grants from our regions, probably just from Antler River. And this is a much shorter one, right? So it gives you two examples of how you could do this. London Community Chaplaincy offers a welcoming and safe social setting. Becoming a parent or guardian is a life-changing, complex experience that doesn't have a one-size-fits-all answer. As kids, we looked to adults for guidance as we navigated the world with fresh eyes. We looked to teachers for help with schoolwork and parental figures for managing emotions and fears. Now, as adults, we recognize that we're still figuring things out as we go, and there's always an opportunity to grow our skills and minds. In London, Ontario, mission and service partners with the London Community Chaplaincy as they respond to parents and guardians who wish to build a network of support, share the parenting journey, and develop new skills as they navigate raising children in a low-income setting. Together, these parents are working hard to build a positive future for their children and families. Each week, London Community Chaplaincy provides a welcoming and safe social setting for adults to connect and grow as parents. not only for learning how to guide a child through critical stages of development, but also for navigating the complex mental aspects of being a parent or guardian while also managing financial stress, food insecurity, housing complications, and more. Gathering with other adults in a similar situation allows participants to share their struggles and triumphs, further building a sense of community. Your gifts to mission and service support partnerships like the London Community Chaplaincy as they help empower parents along the parenting journey. Thank you. So we see there's a need. The need is named to gather parents together to give them support. And that's what London Community Chaplaincy does. So with those two examples in mind and everything else I've said, let's see, I'm looking at the time. I'm going to give you 7 minutes. And let me put up, oops, that's not right. 7 minutes in a breakout room to share your good news. So again, think of one thing that recently happened at your community of faith. Use feeling and action words to give a 60-second story, or maybe shorter, to your group. Who was there? What was the impact? Can you dial in on one specific person's experience or story? So Michelle's going to put you into breakout rooms. Just do the best that you can, and we'll gather you back. I'm going to say, yeah, 7 minutes, Michelle.
Okay,
That's
here
very
we go.
specific.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Brenna. Okay, we're going to go into our rooms now. Automatically, you'll be sent there. Here we go.
Okay. Welcome back. I might just remind you to mute yourselves again if you were chatting, just to get through the rest of the content here. So the next piece of things, well, first I should say, I hope that was inspiring, and I hope everybody had a story to share, and at least you got like a few words out and a few ideas. I knew that wouldn't be perfect, but hopefully you got some ideas going. The rest of the time, we're going to look specifically at grants and applying for grants, and how you might tell your story once you've received a grant. Again, some grants have a very specific reporting process. Others, I think, including our mission and support grants, more or less just say like, hey, we want to hear about it and how did it go, which gives you a lot of room to kind of play with things. So always know what is being asked of you, for sure, if you get a grant. But again, these tips are helpful regardless, so don't leave if you aren't thinking about a grant. These are great things just to kind of have in the back of your mind as you're telling anybody about your ministry or telling your story. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen here. Okay. So I want to talk about the United Church of Canada Foundation, which has a ton of grants. It's a great starting place. And a lot of my material after this slide comes from Eric Laforte, who is our foundation lead. And they do a lot of different grants. The biggest one, probably kind of the main one they're known for, is Seeds of Hope, which supports innovative, unique, and much needed projects which enable us to live out the New Creed's call to seek justice, live with respect in creation, and love and serve others. So a lot falls under that umbrella. If you have an idea for something that you want to start, it'd be great to reach out to the foundation and ask if Seeds of Hope might be right for you. The next round of things, they have some kind of April deadline, so it's kind of good timing if you're thinking about it. It would give you time to get all of the material together. But again, just to say, they have grants on there for continuing education for both lay and ministry personnel. I just saw one today that's like for theological colleges or other kind of institutions to bring in a speaker. There's a specific grant for that. There's all kinds of things on there. Seeds of Hope is just, I think, the biggest one that they do, and they have 2 rounds every year of granting. So these are grant writing tips from Eric. I said, give me like your top 5 or 6, and he was really generous. So when you're applying for a grant, make sure that your answers are clear and concise. Avoid abbreviations, which in church world is really hard. We have a lot, but to try to avoid those, as the readers of the application might not know what you're talking about. I like his question. Ask yourself, can an 8-year-old understand this? So you want to have a really clear application. Like, what is your initiative? What are you asking for funds for? And answer the question that is being asked. Avoid tangents and assume each question being asked is important and needed. So I guess a sort of a downside of grants is that they often have a very kind of narrow set of I shouldn't say narrow, specific set of parameters that they're working within. And so they're asking questions because they need to discern if your project is meeting that criteria, right? The avoid tangents, that's one when I read it, I was like, oh, I've been guilty of that in the past when I've applied for grants, because there's always a part of us that wants to say, and this, right? And this other part. But just answer the question that's being asked. Don't feel like you need to put everything in there. You don't need to start with the history of your church. Just, you know, what is this question that they're asking? Just answer that. Ensure your budget is as accurate as possible. I just name, and I don't have a great answer to this. This is really hard when you're starting a new thing. I've been there, and it's, to me, like sometimes you're like, I have no idea, but do your best. Don't create a budget to fit what you think the reviewing group wants to see. And maybe some of us think, oh, well, they'd want to see us using a smaller budget and like really, you know, running on a shoestring. Or maybe some of us think, oh, we want to kind of make this sound like a really big thing, so we expand our budget. I don't know, but try to be as accurate as possible based on the information that you have. And most grants are very, grant givers are very understanding if things change like mid-project. You just have to report that and tell them if you don't use all the funds, or if your budget gets way blown out of the water for a good reason. There's usually lots of understanding about that. So just to be as honest as possible and as accurate, I guess, as possible. And we've been talking all about this, but let your excitement and energy for the project shine through, right? Just be excited about it, right? You want to show that passion, the thing that got you to this in the first place. Use active language to engage the reviewers. Proofread and edit, which seems obvious, but is not always obvious. And Eric recommends, if possible, get someone unfamiliar with the project to help in this, right? So if you've got a little team working on it, once you're done with it, hand it to somebody who's never seen it before. Have them read through it and see if it makes sense to them, if they catch any typos or errors. That can be a really helpful way just to look as professional and kind of thoughtful and polished as possible. And then when in doubt, and again, this is one I didn't do enough of when I applied for grants, reach out to the granting organization to ask questions. So maybe you read the description online, you're not quite sure if this is for you or not. Reach out to them, ask, say, this is what we're thinking of. Do you think it kind of meets your guidelines or no? Because you don't want to go through all of that work just to find out there was some piece of it that didn't quite fit what they were looking for. It's a lot of work. And maybe, and I know in this case, especially with the foundation, because I work with these amazing people, like they will be so generous with their time and really want to support you as much as possible. So maybe it's not this year or this granting cycle, but you get ready for the next one, kind of thing. For those foundation grants, there's the email there, fdn@united-church.ca. You can reach out to them anytime. And I'll provide the links for the foundation on the information I send out following this meeting. Probably it'll take me a couple days to get all that together, but just for more thoughts and ideas from them, or if you want to ask questions or read more. In general, this is what Eric says is our 5 markers of a successful new ministry. Now, he's thinking of reading all of the applications, but I think of these also just in general. I'm thinking about the book Holy Currencies by Eric Law, where he talks about we often think money is the only thing we need to make something successful. We also need relationships, we need space, we need passion, we need leadership. And those are kind of reflected in what this Eric Laforte mentions here. So these are kind of the things that they're looking for, but you might also, even if you're not applying for a grant, look at like, does this project that we're doing have kind of these things in them? So do you have that clearly articulated mission? Do you know why you're doing what you're doing? Again, come back to problem solution, right? This is the problem we noticed. It's not just a vanity project. It's not just like we want to do something. It's something, a clear purpose, a clear problem that's being addressed, or a clear need, maybe is another word too. Do you have a strong and committed team? A lot of grants ask about that. They want to know that it's not just one person who's doing it all. Do you have a team ready to go? Spiritual and faith formation of the leadership. I can say I didn't get a chance to follow up with Eric and ask exactly what he means by that. But I think we can kind of guess that that means, you know, are people really committed to this? Are they coming at it from a genuine love of God, of neighbor, of community? Is there strength and kind of commitment and dedication in that way? Not to say that the brand new person on your staff or volunteer, or I'm thinking about outside of a church context, like I'm trying not to use just church language, but if the brand new person in your organization, not that they can't be a part of it, but you might want to be really thoughtful again about like, are they the lead on it? How are they supported? That kind of thing. And a plan for financial sustainability. Many grants will ask about this because they're not going to give you a grant year after year after year. Usually, like there are some that are multi-year, but often it's just that get started kind of thing. So what's your plan going forward? Are you going to do stewardship? Hooray. Are you going to look for donations? Are you doing fundraisers? Are you doing other partnerships? The last one there. Are you having some kind of fee model, maybe depending on what you're doing? You want to have a plan for that going forward. And outside partnerships, this is a really big one within the nonprofit sector. More and more grants are asking about who are you partnering with. They want to make sure that their resources are not going to duplicating things, right? Like if the camp down the street or the church down the street is doing the same thing, they kind of want to say like, well, why aren't you just working together, right? If we're going to give the funds. So have you looked at outside partnerships for the thing that you're doing? That's really hard work. So I don't drop that lightly. Like that can be really hard work. But it often means a lot more ongoing sustainability, more volunteers to draw on, more leadership, etc. I'm just going, before we start Q&A, although I'm just going to go back to the foundation. One more thing just to say about the foundation. On their website, I'll share with you, I'll highlight a link. They have a really great packet about media for people who have received a grant, how to report and how to tell the story. Great information about pictures, like what pictures to take, how to make them look as active and engaging as possible. And again, that's great if you receive one of their grants or if you want to do reporting for mission support grant. It's also great if you just want to put something on your social media or in your church newsletter. So just to highlight that, I want to share that with you. I thought about doing it. It was really hard to think about how to show you here. It's easy, one of those things, easier if you just look at it. But that's coming to you as well. Okay, sorry, go all the way back through here. So just before we have 10 minutes or so for Q&A, I am going to promote our Called to Be the Church, the Journey upcoming learning opportunities this spring. So getting started in stewardship, we get you started in stewardship. This is for either individuals or if you have a team at your community of faith, you can jump right into this one. We have 2 opportunities this week, actually, February 22nd, either at 4 or 6:30 p.m. Eastern. And then the next one is on April 10th. Setting up your giving program is being offered. There's 2 sessions, April 30th through May 15th. This is specifically for communities of faith that are having a giving program or a stewardship campaign. We use that language interchangeably sometime in the next 6 months or so. So you can hold those dates. I don't think registration's open yet for that one, but it soon will be. And then bequests and estate giving, planned giving, legacy giving, you might hear all those terms, is running on April 24th and May 8th. You can register for that one now. Storytelling, the idea of inspiring, is a part of all of our classes, so you can engage with that topic more. All of our online learning things are on churchx.ca, so hopefully you have some familiarity with ChurchX. Lots of great programs there. So you can sign up there and also contact me if you have any questions. Okay, Q&A. So I'm going to stop sharing and stop talking, and I'm curious to hear from you if there are specific questions you have, and I'll do my best to answer them.
I invite you just to raise your hand. It's Michelle talking, Tech Help, or put a question in the chat and I'll bring it to Brenna's attention. You can use the reactions function as well to raise your hand, or just wave your hand boldly.
Oh, and while people are thinking, I'm going to mention too, in terms of our stewardship courses, for people here who are in a non-congregational ministry like camps, chaplaincy, nonprofits, whatever. One of my colleagues, Vicki Nelson, runs a stewardship class just for those organizations, kind of, because we know like stewardship and donors and stuff is different outside of a church than within a church. So she does that as soon as she has sort of enough gathered to run a class. So if you have questions about that or want to do that anytime, I just see chaplaincy and maybe camp people here. I just throw that out there as an opportunity. So you can email me and I'll get you connected. Okay. Now, are there any questions?
I'm not seeing any right now.
Oh, Mary Joan, are you waving your hand? Yeah, okay, just unmute yourself.
Do you want to unmute yourself, Mary Joan?
Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
go ahead.
It's okay. Yeah, I wanted to ask how the February 22nd sessions are different from today.
Oh, yeah. So getting started in stewardship is an overview class to our whole stewardship program. So we talk about all kinds of things. We look at the 3 pillars of stewardship for us, which are invite, inspire, and thank. So how congregations might approach stewardship from a holistic, ongoing, year-round perspective. And we give folks a couple of assignments, like data collection and things, to get them ready to do a bigger program with us. But this is more, tonight was really about, like the inspire piece of that and storytelling. But this is getting started is a bit broader. So yeah, thank you for asking that.
Okay.
Thanks, Mary Jo. Anyone else? Just unmute and speak out. There's few enough of us that you're welcome to do that.
And does anybody, if anybody felt so moved, you could practice telling us a story right now. Sharing the good news.
Well, this is Brian here from
Hi,
Eden
Brian.
in Mississauga. Nice to see you again, Brenna. First, I'd like to thank you for putting this presentation on. So I certainly got a lot out of it. I'm sure other people did as well. I'll reshare the little story that I shared in the breakout group with our team there. Yesterday, of course, was Family Day, and our Eden Outreach group has for the past, I guess, 3 years now put on a special session for children on the afternoon of Family Day. Typically, we have 2, 3, maybe 4 if we're lucky children in Sunday school, so it's a pretty small group. But for this particular activity, our Eden Outreach group invites children from the neighborhood to come by with their parents, and of course the congregation members can invite neighbors with small children to come, with the idea that we wanted to just have a fun afternoon for a few hours with children and get them kind of indoctrinated to the facility. And of course, they bring parents or grandparents with them, and just kind of an outreach to the community. So yesterday, I think we had about 42 children came to this event. And during that time, they were there from about 9:30 until 12. They had all kinds of activities for them, and face painting. There was a drumming circle where one of our congregation members brings a whole bunch of drums so they can play on the drums. That's singing songs and acting out and doing kids things that they all enjoyed. And then at the end of it, of course, there were snacks and pizza for everybody, and this is all free of charge. There's no thing. We just had to we limited it to 50 people because we needed to have some sense of how many would come, and we couldn't really handle many more than that. So it was a very successful event, which I'm sure people will continue to want to come to again next year.
That's awesome. Thanks, Brian. I love that story. Yeah. And Brian and the Eden team are graduates, I guess, of our stewardship best practices. So they know about inspiring, and yeah, that's great. Did you get photos, Brian?
Oh, yes.
Good.
We have a new office administrator, and she's really sharp in terms of social media. So her theme is that if you don't give her pictures, the event never happened.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
I know. And what I love about your description of it is you had kind of for, again, remembering audiences. And I mean, I think people often connect most emotionally, but there are the people who like the facts and figures and data and things. And so to say there's 42 children, right? They were here from this time to this time, but then there's the description of what they were doing, and there was pizza, and there was that, like, and they were drumming. And so then you start to have like, oh, like that sounds nice, right? Like you have kind of the both and. So yeah, so that's a really great example. Anybody else questions or want to share good news? Okay. Well, if not, I mean, you all know where to find me. So I think my email's in the chat, and I'm here for anything stewardship related. I'm your mission and service kind of contact to folks like Lindsay, and anything about planned or legacy giving, I can help with. So, and thanks for all that you do. I know that you all represent so much good news, and I'm really grateful to all of you and what you do. So, Lenten blessings, and I hope to see you sometime again. I'll end there.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. And thanks to my tech team.
Is the leader